Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Ganganasadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
Hello, welcome. Pay very close attention to these teachings. They are from a work of Adi Shankaracharya, Viveka Chudamani, and it is Advaita Vedanta. So these are the teachings that you find in the scriptures. They are according to the scriptures. So pay very attention to these teachings. Listen very carefully to these teachings. Then you should reflect upon them, reflecting a lot upon these teachings, and then meditate upon these teachings so that they may bear fruit in your heart. So let's resume to verse 355. Peaceful, quiet, controlled. One who has given up all desires and who is full of endurance. So to be peaceful, quiet, and controlled, desires have to be renounced, given up. And without endurance, you cannot make it. So for one staying peaceful, quiet, and controlled, endurance has to be there, so that you can stay in that abstraction from desires, from sense pleasures, and still grow. And he alone can attain samadhi, because others are engrossed, trapped, dependent, weakened, distracted, fragile towards sense pleasures, sense objects. And in that samadhi, feel the oneness with all. By that feeling of oneness, by that experience of oneness with all, he does away with the darkness that comes from ignorance about his real self and its results, fears, attachments, etc., etc. It burns it all. It samadhi. And being Brahman, he remains at peace, free from all imaginations and actions. So first he became quiet and still, because he didn't know who he really was. So by the control of the senses, by endurance. Then by the realization who he really is. He is free, he remains at peace, free from imaginations. Imagination that I'm a body, that I need this and that, I have to do this and this and this. Free of all those imaginations and the subsequent actions. So those who are engaged in samadhi, who are experiencing samadhi, they alone, by reducing the external, senses, thought, ego, and all, in consciousness, being free from the bondage of birth and death, attain the supreme bliss, not those who only talk of the Atman. So, only those that cut away the externals, the senses, thoughts, ego, and all, only those engage in samadhi. And only those who attain of samadhi attain the supreme bliss. So that those who only talked about the Atman, those do not attain samadhi. Because despite what they know, they are still engrossed. And, well, ignorance about the nature of the Atman is something which is difficult to overcome, because coming closer to the knowledge, to awaken master to give the knowledge, is one step. But then the second obstacle, especially when there's no master, when it's the scriptures, for example, it's to escape not the ignorance, but the knowledge, because mind likes a lot of knowledge. It becomes important. It feels important. And it's very binding and blinding also, depending on the nature of the seeker. So knowledge becomes an obstacle. If things don't go right, it also becomes an obstacle. And it is usually for those who only talk about it, not with those who do the work, who abstract from the objects of senses, who renunciate them all. It is through the difference of the upadis that the Atman is seen to be different. So this samadhi is only to take away the name and the form. One who is learned tries to do this only for his reason. So it is through the upadis, the layers, the bodies, that the Atman is seen different. So this samadhi is only to take away the name and the form, like a piece of clay goes into the water and dissolves again. So this being in samadhi dissolves all these upadis that separate from real identity. So this samadhi is only to take away the name and the form, because you get sucked in again to that ocean of infinite bliss where no object is there, no form is there, just pure and complete existence, wholeness. One who is learned tries to do this only for this reason. And by being in samadhi, as you come out of it, more and more you look at things as a dream. You can do that even without samadhi. You can and you should look at things as a dream. And you have this comparison because you have dreams. So you understand the nature of what you call reality. But in this case, let's use the terminology, you know, the nature of that which is not the self. Because dream state, waking state, they are the same nature. Giving up all desires, the yogi, thinking of that supreme being only, becomes the supreme, as the worm becomes the wasp by thinking of the wasp. So giving up all desires, the yogi, only the yogi does this. Only that one who gives up all desires is fit to be called a yogi. Thinking of that supreme being only. Well, this is because you abstract of all desires, apart from liberation, of course. But there is an intent behind desires. You want that bliss, you want that realization, you want the source, even if you don't know. But you need to satisfy something through those desires. It is to touch your real nature, bliss, ananda. So when you cut all these desires and you remain with just one desire, everything goes to this desire and becomes very strong. And that thinking of that supreme only comes with this intensity. And in that way, it becomes the supreme, because upadis dissolve. When deeply engaged in thought, one loses his individuality and becomes one with that thought. One remains in it for a long, long time, he becomes that. But it must be one uniform thought for a long, long time. So when deeply engaged in thought, one loses his individuality and becomes one with that thought, with that object. They merge. If it is one thought for a long, long, long time. In this case, Brahman is more, it may start as a thought, but as it gets meaning and as you cut desires, it starts to gain dimension, existence, perception, but in different ways where you're used to of perception. It is not the same, so it may cause confusion. So one who remains with it for a long, long time becomes one with it. So in every object of meditation, every technique, by meditating in that technique, you will merge with it. The object of meditation and the meditator become one. So it is with Brahman, they become one. But it must be uniform thought for a long, long time. No wavering, no other thoughts, and this is impossible if you haven't cut these dependencies on sense pleasures, because they will always come. Random thoughts, conscious thought, whatever. Fruits of desires, fruits of restlessness, it's always coming. This has to be clean. Just Brahman, just Brahman. So very, very subtle is the truth of Paramatman, that nobody can see with that naked eye, which is the gross intellect. Therefore, with keen perception, and only in Samadhi, can it be known by a great and very pure intellect. Because, well, if it's not pure intellect, it cannot enter Samadhi. If you haven't cut with sense pleasures, if you haven't given up on them, intellect will not be pure. So you see how it works together. So this keen perception is the fruit of this subtle mind, becomes keen perception, and in Samadhi only. Has gold, when purified, loses its dross and attains its own pure state? So this mind, giving up the three qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas, through dhyan, through meditation, attains the pure state of the Atman. And this is actually a very good example, not just because of the gold, but of the process of purification, which is through heat. And meditation brings up the inner fires that purify all. So giving up the three qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas, and the three qualities are the birth of the world. They are the blocks that build the world. So Giving up these three qualities, the gunas, you give up the world entirely. And like I said, it's not something you do once and it's over. You have to give it up again and again and again and again, because it superimposes. It comes back to you to impress you, to entertain you, to distract you. And it comes again and again and again and again, this way, that way, from this side, that side. So you have to continuously give it up. And by giving this, and through gyan, through dhyan, through meditation in the self, and that is that which you already have a perception, has meaning, there's a vision of it, it's touchable, but not in any other sense that you've noticed, because it is very subtle, and because your mind is not engrossed by sense pleasures, by desires, by attachments. The habit of meditation must be practiced without any break. When the mature, ripe, or experienced mind is absorbed in Brahman, then comes Samadhi, the state that is free from all doubts, that is free from everything. And then naturally one becomes the enjoyer of eternal bliss. Naturally means without effort. When all these upadis are dissolved through Samadhi, then no more effort, nothing to counter. Until then, effort is there. The habit of meditation must be practiced without any break. So first there is the sitting meditations, for example, and they continue for a long time, but they may even remain. That depends on a lot of factors, because the spiritual path, you may walk it through one philosophy only, or through several philosophies, depending on your personal needs. So the sitting meditation will help you in accordance with a lot of things that you have given up already, or else you cannot sit and meditate, and not for a long time, because you have to do other things. But then, as you, through the formal sitting meditation, you develop the meditative mood. Your meditation is supposed to be continuous, non-stop. There are those who sit non-stop in samadhi in meditation, yes, but the body will help, that posture helps to deepen this, but eventually that meditative mood develops, and then it doesn't matter in which position the body is. Meditation continues non-stop. But take it as sitting down, it is better, so that your mind doesn't play tricks with you, and it will. So the habit of meditation must be practiced without any break. So the habit must be practiced without any break. So at this level, what I explain, and at different levels, is the same. So if you start with a number of hours daily, it doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3, 4 at a time, or different sittings of 1 hour, 2, 3, 4, 5, it doesn't matter. But whatever you are starting with and continuing with and going with, you don't interrupt. If it is 1 hour, it's daily. But at this level, 1 hour is nothing. Nothing. But just for an example. So whatever you're doing, you don't interrupt. There's no Sunday. It's continuous. Until it takes over all the time. When the mature, ripe, or experienced, mature mind that has gone through a lot of meditation, or has gotten purified, then it is absorbed in Brahman. So it's like you have a big magnet, a huge magnet, which is Brahman, and you have a big piece of metal, which is the mind. And you have those, how do you call that? Steel strings. I'm sure there's another name for it, but you will understand. Some cables, steel cables, holding on this piece of iron to the ground. The magnet is turned on, it is pulling the iron, but the cables are very strong, so you don't feel that. You don't feel that pulling. It is strapped to the ground. So as you cut the cables, then automatically that piece of iron will be taken by the force of the magnet. So it is samadhi. As you cut attachments, dependencies, desires for sense pleasures, for objects of the senses, then your mind enters samadhi, is absorbed back into samadhi. Then comes samadhi, the state that is free from all doubts, the state that is free from the world. It is being immersed back into the source, into Brahman. Like nothing else is there, just totality. And it gets in that, it remains in that state, and the longer it stays there, the more of these cables get dissolved, get burned. All sheets, all layers are getting dissolved. And then naturally, because he has been there, immersed, absorbed in Brahman, and then naturally, because no more cables, no more need to make any efforts, so then naturally one becomes the enjoyer of eternal bliss. The enjoyer is the perspective of that individual consciousness. Because from the perspective of Brahman, I'm not the enjoyer of bliss, I am bliss. By this samadhi, all desires and knots of the heart are destroyed, as well as all actions internally and externally. And without any effort on the part of the individual comes the manifestation of the self. Of course, no more cables, no more strings, nothing. Naturally, realization comes after this work has been done. Why am I underlying this? Because these sentences, naturally comes the manifestation of the self. So seekers that are not mature, are not experienced, and it doesn't matter how many years of the quest they have, it makes no difference, because information is one thing, understanding is another thing. Simultaneously comes the destruction of the mind and desires and the realization of the self. So by this samadhi, all desires and knots of the heart are destroyed. The seeds that make up life and the continuing of life and birth and death and all of this, they get destroyed, dissolved in this samadhi. And even so, by being in samadhi more and more, you tend to look at the world as a dream. It's like you went to what you call a dream now, and knowing that it is a dream, it would be very difficult to give it validity, importance, because it's just a dream. So as you go into samadhi is the same thing. as you come back, as you still come back, you tend to look at things like they were a dream. So if the knots of the heart are destroyed, of course, as well of all its actions, without it, actions are unnecessary, internally and externally. And without any effort, because these knots and actions were destroyed, without any effort on the part of the individual, comes the manifestation of the self. So like I was explaining, the magnet is there, you cut the cables and no effort because it is being pulled. It always have been. Simultaneously comes the destruction of the mind and desires, which reside there, and the realization of the self, simultaneously. You wake up to who you are and things get destroyed. But it's like, you see, there's the absolute part of the teaching. So when one thing ends, the other ends. So when illusion ends, when you realize the self, illusion ends immediately. Then there's the teaching. You have to maintain there and be in samadhi, being immersed in the self for a long time to disappear all these things. They are not opposites. They are showing just different angles of the same thing. Hearing of Brahman is good, but thinking is 100 times better than hearing. So not just hearing, but thinking of it, tuning your mind to it, thinking about it, contemplating it. It's 100 times better than hearing. Millions of times greater than this is meditation. And when one becomes free from doubt in that meditation, that is endlessly greater. So listening is very good. Pondering about it, reflecting about it is even better, but meditating on it is by far even better. And when that meditation is free from doubts, when that seeker is free from doubts, and it's difficult to be free from doubts if the mind has not been purified. But as it becomes free from doubts, it is infinitely better to meditate free of doubts. Only by that meditation, which is free from all doubt, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, one realizes the self. Well, this can have double meanings. But okay, let's take it. As you are free from doubts, you enter Samadhi. And no doubts at all. So that means also no modifications in the mind, no restlessness in the mind. The mind is pure. So you can maintain that steady Samadhi, that lasts longer, that Nirvikalpa Samadhi. One realizes the self. Otherwise, other thoughts will come in the unstable mind, which will get mixed up with them. And then, disturbing it, no Samadhi is possible. Therefore, attain Samadhi by controlling all the senses. Again, attain Samadhi by controlling all the senses. Remain always in peace. Those senses have to remain always at their source. And by attaining Samadhi, destroy the darkness that rises from ignorance by the practice of seeing oneness always and everywhere. And it becomes more simple. As you reach Samadhi, the difficult part is to get here, because you have to control all the senses, cut all attachments, fears, all of that. Remaining always at peace, abstracted from fluctuations, from investments. And then as you attain Samadhi, when those physical eyes reopen again, when the world comes back again, you look at it very differently. It doesn't have the same power it had previously. And you start seeing that which you experience in samadhi everywhere. This is the first door to yoga, the control of speech, not talking too much, then control of the mind. Practice non-receiving in the mind, then give up all expectations, then all desires, and always be alone. So the control of the speech is the first step, because speech bounds you, connects you to imagination, to the world, to its investments with others. It wastes a lot of your energy and opens the door to a lot of confusion for the mind. So not talking too much preserves energy, keeps you away from impurities, and allows you not to be entangled. Then it's possible to control the mind, to keep it steady. Practice non-receiving in the mind, abstracting from sense impressions, all of them. And instead of contemplating things and seeing things and wonder about them, uninterest with everything. Just reject them immediately. Don't let them enter your mind. Then give up all expectations. This is easy to understand. Whatever expectation there might be, even from your spiritual practice, give up all expectations. Then all desires, which are the seeds of expectations, more or less. And always be alone, because where there's two, there's not one. So always be alone helps, because it's easier for you to focus on this inner world, on this internal world, without any distractions. And if things go well, then you will reach that state on where you are completely alone. And that is bliss, because it is the oneness of the self. As long as there's two, there's suffering. That means as long as there's duality, there is suffering. So be always alone, always with the self. Okay.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.